Hello, everyone, and welcome to Season 4, Episode 16. Actually, this is the 99th episode that I have produced for the Be Well with Dr. Michelle Greenwell podcast. So I'm really excited to be here and to share with you today. I am not bringing on a guest because I wanted to talk about some of the things that are most predominant in the work that I do and the way that I live. And this has become really evident in the last couple of weeks as people have been asking me questions. I've been reaching out for some very special projects that are going to happen. And what is at the heart of that? So that's what I want to share with you today. So we're going to be looking at what is the BioEnergetic Wellness Formula? Why is it important? What could it be doing for you in your self-care? And how could you be completely changing your day so that innate healing potential is happening with everything that you do? That's what I want to talk about today. So before we get started, let's dive into what kind of tea did I bring today. So I'm going to show you my jar because I keep things in the jar in the cupboard here. My Mission for Change community tea. And the reason I'm going to highlight this tea today is because this has become an incredible companion for me for business meetings, for connections with different kinds of groups. And it's the only blend where I actually went into a deep dive into 2 ingredients at a time and the relationship of those 2 ingredients to each other, and then the overall relationship of all the ingredients in this blend to create the space for what the intention says. And if that's a lot of information about tea, because you're just coming on the first time that you're hearing this about tea and from me, then you're going to know I love tea, but also I really love goal setting and intention. And together, there is this incredible package that can happen. So the Mission for Change community tea is, here's the intention. In community, we are empowered for change. One of the things that I have done with this tea is, one, I often make it for the board meetings that I do for Can Be Well. And that's the Canadian Association of BioEnergetic Wellness. And what happens in those meetings is we quickly move through the material that's going to get us to our goals. And I'm usually sipping on this tea. I change it up, but this is often one. The other is that one of the classes I teach, the Chi Integration series, this one for one whole series, we spent 8 weeks using just this tea. So every time we gathered, that was the tea that we all blended. We all brought about that community idea for change. And then that is how other things were inspired in the people that we interacted with, but also it gelled us as a really solid unit. And the class just keeps going on. We're on, I don't know even what it is, series like 22 or something like that. That many renditions because people just enjoy the content of what we're working on and really together supporting each other for our goal setting and thriving. And that's really exciting. So that's why I chose Mission for Change today. And whatever you have in your mug, I'm going to lift mine in a cheer. I've got my dance debut mug. This is when I started the business way back when. It's now the Greenwell Center for Holistic Health, with Dance Debut as a part of that, and it's become all more encompassing. So cheers. I wish you the same in the intentions that you decide to set as you move forward. And today, I hope I'm inspiring you to think differently about the content of what you put into your day. Cheers. Oh, beautiful. Today was a lot of bagging of different kinds of teas. So we had black tea going on today. So it's lovely to come back to this herbal combination. And there's so many flavors. They come in like little waves into the tongue, which is amazing. Okay, so let's dive in. Episode 99 of the podcast. I never imagined I would be here. I started the podcast thinking it would just be something I do as an experience to see where it was going to go. And it's created such amazing conversations with people and relationships. And that again is about what we're talking about, building community and creating the space for all of us to change and grow. Okay, in order to do that, we need a bioenergetic wellness formula. People often ask me, what is the scientific background behind what you do? Well, there's layers. There's layers. So it's a difficult question, not because I can't answer it and I don't have the science sitting there. It's because there's so many layers to it. Where do I start to explain? First off, I'm working with Chinese medicine concepts, which come from thousands of years and all kinds of results, depending on how they've been used. And if I'm doing movement, then the movement results would be based on what people gain in health and wellness by doing Tai Chi movements. But there's the virtues of Tai Chi. There's the concepts of Tai Chi that everybody's empowered by and living with as a result of practicing Tai Chi. And again, that goes back thousands of years and how the change happens. Fast forward to what I want to talk about now, which is the BioEnergetic Wellness Formula. As I was working on my master's thesis, I was evaluating what are the key concepts that help people in my Tai Chi 10 and 108 is what I called it, which was introducing the idea of biofeedback. So how to gain information from the body that can support what kinds of Tai Chi exercises should you be doing, how many do you need, what kind of order do you need to work on in it, and then creating a list of Tai Chi movements that people could engage in as they were learning the 108 moves from Master Moy's work, which is the bulk of the Tai Chi work that I work with. And from the interviews that I did for the thesis, it became really apparent two things. One was it was empowering to know that you could get feedback from the body about what it needed and what was the priority. So that was really interesting for people to have that kind of skill. The second was for those people that use that skill all the time, they forgot about it. They forgot that it was even a skill because it just became what they were doing all the way through their day. And I want to draw attention to that because when people ask me about what is the science, when we are involved in what we're doing and we do it without thinking about it anymore, it just is a way of living, a way of doing things. It no longer requires us to pay attention to it, and we don't even realize that it's sitting there. Now, how are you going to measure that? That becomes a little bit difficult. It's measurable when you put these things in a row. But when you are gaining biofeedback from the body every day, all day, in things that you do, it's just what you do. And for those people that don't use that skill, they can't understand what would be the value, how would you measure it, why would you need it. So it becomes a way of living. It's a way of developing habits and a way of creating patterns for yourself that are lifting you up and energizing you all the time. So I guess the evidence then becomes when you slide down and you're not feeling well or you're tired, lethargic, your emotions are out of balance, what are you going to do? You're going to come back around to these patterns that you know lift you up and give you vitality. And that is the evidence that it's working for you, which is fantastic. And every day is different because your body needs different things on different days. It's not a cookie cutter fit. It's not going to be, this always works for me. No, it can, but it might be slower. It's much faster to say, what's the priority of what I need today? And then dive into it. And of course, how you feel and what you notice is going to be more important. Okay, I'm going to take you to my It's in the Cards deck. And you've seen me bring this up in many episodes. I'm bringing it up today because this deck of cards, it was a very special project as a result of the pandemic and the opportunity to put together some art-based activities that could be empowering for people. And this card deck came out of all the tools that I have in my Touch for Health toolbox, along with my knowledge of movement, Tai Chi, dance, foot sensors. There were so many lovely little nuggets that I could bring together and I could put into a formula for people to easily be able to pick something up and just activate it and be involved in it. And again, if we're going back to the science of it, well, these tools have all been existing for a long time. People have had great, incredible results with these tools. All I did was put it into a package so that people would have it in one spot. One way to play, one way to explore, and a card deck is really simple and easy. All right, so the background of this is, it does come from, well, a long background, traditional Chinese medicine, 5-element theory. It also has exploration ways. And what happened was I built this deck ahead of working on my dissertation, and it became the answers for my dissertation, which was very interesting. Because instead of me discovering, which I did at the end of my dissertation, I had already known the information previous. It just didn't come to me until I finished writing the dissertation and my final result. And I had already discovered it well earlier. But again, when things are working well, you don't realize what's sitting there for you. It's one of those things, they just disappear into the background because they work so well. The only time we really notice is when things don't work well, and then that's when our attention gets drawn. So it's lovely to know this was already in place. So what I've done is I've brought up my compass cards. You can find all of this on my YouTube channel under the It's in the Cards playlist. You can find these cards because I talk about all the different elements in that video playlist. But what I want to talk about is the key pieces and how vital they are for the way that your day goes and how you want to function. So if I look at the first card, so now if you're listening to the podcast, I've held up the cards and you haven't been able to really notice, but you don't need to because I'm talking about it, just so you know. And you don't need to write it down because you can go back to the podcast, but you can also go to that playlist and check everything out for something if you want to look it up, okay? If you're driving in your car, that's okay, keep listening. The very first thing, first card, I'm just going to hold up the card that says goal setting. What I learned in Touch for Health as we went to do balance, we call them balances. So that's bringing all the systems back into harmony with each other. That's called balancing. We would go into 14 muscles. We could check each muscle, which would be checking each system. And we could turn on any muscle that wasn't working properly. We could turn it on so it would come back into harmony with the rest of the muscles and the rest of the systems. Before we started doing anything, we needed to know where we were going. If all those muscles are working, what would you want to be doing with them? Because you could be sitting on the couch and your muscles might be very happy right where they are. When you say, hey, I want to get to the kitchen and make dinner, now the muscles go, oh, you're going to need me, me, and me. And then they all engage towards that goal. It's the same thing for how we have our day, how we want to live our life, where we want to go, some things we want to accomplish. If we never identify where we want to go, then our body doesn't know how we want to respond to that. And we need to give it some cues so it has a way to go. So goal setting. So the goal setting could be as simple as I easily and joyfully learn to use my Touch for Health materials. That could be something. Or I easily and joyfully take the It's in the Cards deck and start exploring all the energy and vitality that's inside. Could be that. And with that, you have now set up the intention of where you want to go, and everything that you need to get there is going to start to be attracted to you. It's the law of attraction. You set your compass, and the law of attraction starts to pull in the pieces that you'll need to get there. Okay, so that leads us to the second part, which is intention. So the next part of our compass is, what is your intended outcome? So, okay, you want to easily and joyfully use the It's in the Cards. So you're doing that, but why? What is it you want to accomplish out of that? It could be you want more energy and vitality in your day. You could be wanting to sleep easier at night. Could be you want to connect with more people who are in the wellness industry. So when you know what that outcome is on the other side of that goal, that becomes very important again for what's going to be attracted into your day and how it's going to be engaging. So intention is slightly different than goal setting, and it can also have a quality to it. With the quality, I mean, I can have a good day. I can just set up to have a good day. But I could also have a day that's very creative. I could have a day that's inspired by other people. I could have a day where I'm gathering in community with some of my neighbors and friends. So I have to think about the kind of quality and content that I want within my day that might be able to enhance my experiences. And it could be you want the five senses to just be really brought up and to be really present in your experiences that you're having. That could be part of the intention. So there's a little bit of a difference between what the goal setting is going to be and what your intentions are with that. Where do you want to be at the end result? And if you accomplish that end result, where would you go from there? That would be the way that Dr. John Thie, who was the developer of the Touch for Health system, that's the way he would have approached goal setting. Don't be happy with just, I need to get to the kitchen to make dinner. What do you want to do? You're making your dinner. What else do you want? Well, I want to set the table and have a beautiful dining room. Okay, now you've set the dining room. What else do you want? I think I'll put candles on the table. Well, maybe I'll get a bottle of wine out. Maybe I'd like to invite somebody to join me. Maybe I want to have a conversation about, and you can keep adding on and building the pieces of that until it's a really robust experience that you could have. All right, so those are two of the pieces. So now the next part of the formula that's important is the awareness. So I'm just going to hold up the awareness card. The awareness is, what do you know about the situation that you're trying to change? What do you know about the level of stress on your body? What do you know about some of the components that you might need to accomplish the goal? And then there's going to be ones that you have no idea exist or that could be supportive to you. And so we don't know what those are, but we want to have an awareness, what it feels like before we start, what it feels like when we're finished, and any changes that we've made that are going to stick. That's the other thing that we're looking for. And if we're looking at what I would do in a class, because I set up all my classes the same way, I set up conversations, I set up my business meetings this way, everything is based around this formula, because then I always know I'm energetically activating to the highest good. And that is a lot better than I have a meeting to go to. I wonder what we'll discuss. I wonder what our results will be. I don't have to wonder. I know it's going to be for the highest good because I've already envisioned the direction I'd like to head and the quality that I want to have with it. So my awareness is, it could be, was what I do in my classes. What is the stress around this goal? So the awareness could be, and you've seen me do this on many episodes, as well as in other podcasts I do with people, I often use the head as a way to understand the level of stress being held in the body. And the if people are referring to the polyvagal theory, then what is the tension being held in the neck that is telling you about the status of the nervous system? And so I invite people, there's different ways to do it, but today I invite you to just look straight forward and then turn your head to one side. Notice what it feels like to turn your head. Notice what the rotation feels like. And then notice how the neck feels. Okay, I'm going to go the other way. Ooh, something's sticking on that side. I have kind of a free flow going to the right, but the left side, there's in my back, there's like stuff that's like catching and not wanting to turn. So to the left doesn't have the same mobility as to the right has. So now I have an awareness that in my nervous system, it is not balanced. Right and left are not balanced. But I also have structurally, it's not really balanced. And then the quality is definitely not balanced. The other thing that I can realize from this is I'm also not integrated. I'm not integrated because when I turned my head, what I felt was a head turn, an isolated movement. And that's most often through physiotherapy, orthopedic kinds of work. They're looking for that rotation of what does that muscle do. But I'm not working from that perspective. I'm working from a whole body perspective. And I want to know, how is my brain and body integrated so that I'm using whole body approaches for everything that I'm doing. Now, what is the scientific background of all that? It's not a background that you'd have to measure that way. It's an understanding of how things function. And it's an understanding of what it feels like when things integrate and when they don't integrate. And that's how you experience things. Okay, so here's what we're going to do. I want you to think integration, and I want you to turn your head. And as you turn your head to the side, notice what happens for the range of motion. And you may notice the cracks and groans in your neck might have changed too. I'm just going to go the other way. Okay, what I noticed was I had an increased range of motion on both sides. The cracks and groans to the left kind of disappeared, and my belly engaged to help me make the rotation, and I could feel all the way up my spine, everything turning to be engaged with it. Now, I didn't have that on the first go round. So my awareness was in isolated movements. I was not integrated. You may have felt the same. And when I suggested to you, see what happens in the integration, the body went, we need more than just that isolation. And the rest of the body came on board. And what's really interesting about that is when we're integrated and the brain and the body are communicating to each other, they function so much better. You can have greater hand-eye coordination. You can have more strength in a movement. You can increase your flexibility. You can really change outcomes because things are coordinated. And for those people that maybe reach down to grab a box and then they put the back out and they can't figure out why, all they did was reach down. That why could be because there was not integration happening. So when you reached down, it was your arms that reached, the shoulder muscles engaged, but the back did not, the legs did not. They weren't aware that they needed to be a part of the story. And all of a sudden the back gave out because it just didn't have the support it needed when you lifted the box. Integration brings that whole body movement in, gives you this opportunity for everything to work together in wholeness. All right. So that's one kind of awareness. There are many kinds of awareness that I love to play with. And across the podcast, across the different programs that I'm involved in, you are exposed to all those kinds of awareness ideas as we go along. But for today, we have the head turn and we have the integration of it. So now that we have that in place, we've set our compass, we know where we're going, we've checked in with our awareness, how is it functioning? At the start, it wasn't very integrated. By thinking about it, I could make it integrated, but what I want is whole body movement. It doesn't require me thinking about it. I want to be able to just dive in and know that everything is going to be there for me, so I'm going to have the best experience possible. So now what we need to do is move ourselves over to the next card, which is creating a sense of community. Now you may wonder, what does that have to do with accomplishing a goal? Our innate healing potential is engaged. This is science that comes out of 1930s, 1940s, that when a healer engaged for the intention of healing, working with another person, the enzymes of both the person they're engaging with as well as themselves, enzymes immediately went into action to bring harmony to the systems. And it didn't go certain enzymes engaged, and it was always the same ones in a row. It didn't. What it went to was, what did the body need? Those enzymes were activated. So again, from a science perspective, you might be trying to measure, does this enzyme function? Does this enzyme function? It might not have been required. So you might be measuring something and saying, no, it didn't engage. But if it wasn't required, then it's not a priority. And that's the place that I come from. What is the priority? What is it the body needs first? But the ability to engage in a community means we can get the innate healing potential activated by just the intention of meeting with another person, the idea of healing. I love this because every single interaction you have in a day, you can set up with the intention that it's always going to be for the highest good of healing. Now, if you think about your day, you probably don't think in those terms. You're probably thinking, I need to go to the store, I need to pick up these things, I need to stop at the post office, I need to get to the bank. You have all those daily activities. You're not thinking about how a sense of community is going to get the enzymes going so you can heal while you're on your journey for that. But if I go to the post office and I go in and I see the lovely person that helps me out every week with incredible support to make sure my packages are done correctly and that I've done all the things on it that are needed, and that exchange together, it's such a delight to go to the post office and have that conversation. And if I think about going to the bank, and yes, I might be at the ATM machine, I don't have much interaction, but I certainly can turn around and smile to the person who's next in line and say, have a great day, thanks for waiting. And that person will smile back, and right there is our interaction, building a sense of community for innate healing potential to be activated. That's all you need. Okay, so we have this piece, how you create community. It can be one interaction, it can be a group of people that you come together with, and you know that when I'm having a meeting for whatever project I'm working on and however many people are involved, I have already set the stage to make sure all my interactions have that same healing capacity. And how do I usually activate it? A cup of tea. I know what the intention is on the package. I know what the herbs are that are included. I know, especially on this blend, I know how the interaction of the herbs work with each other. And I know overall how they work together to create the package that this tea creates. So I have a way to activate instantly. So what did I just inspire by sipping on that tea? I inspired you to think a little bit differently about your day. How might you be engaged in getting that innate healing potential activated? Are you participating in that, or are you taking energy away from that? And I'm hoping by sipping on that tea, I'm inspiring you to think differently, act differently, make a change in your pattern that's going to be for your highest good, and then keep it. It's really that simple. Okay, the last card. The last card is intuition. What does that mean? Some people think that intuition is something that some people are gifted with. But what I know is I didn't think I was gifted with it. I didn't understand intuition. But what I've discovered over time is the more that I'm in line with my goals and my intentions, the more intuition I have, the more I'm aware of what cues to pick up that are going towards that goal. And so sometimes I get an email that comes to me that has a clue in it that is towards the goal, and I didn't know that email was coming. I didn't even know it was going to be on my radar of something to look at. But it gives me this opportunity to interact in a different way and also to understand the cues coming towards me. Sometimes it's new ideas. I wouldn't have known they were going to be valuable ideas, except that I've already set my compass. And now my compass is feeding me information, and then I can start to pick up on things. I pick up really, really quickly. I also find that my friends who also work in this similar fashion, they can be really quick with theirs. So when two of us get going with intuitive hits, you can have a lot happen in a short period of time. And that becomes really exciting. That's my great day when I can go, oh, I never imagined that I would be able to take this goal to this level or in this way or with the ideas or content that's come to it. And that is just so super exciting. All right, so that's a little bit about the BioEnergetic Wellness Formula. People ask me a lot of times, how do I have enough energy for all the things that I'm doing? That's how. And a lot of things are interrelated. A lot of things come onto the schedule. Sometimes it's like, I don't think I can handle all the things coming, but then I just let go of it, knowing what my ultimate goal is and knowing that if it's important and it's a priority, it's just going to happen. The right things will be coming in place as they need to be. All right. So if you're listening to previous podcasts, the first year I wasn't using that formula so much. But as we come into the second, third, and fourth year, particularly season 4, I've been very specific on how I put together the podcast. I want everyone to have a healing session out of every podcast. The earlier ones, we had a lot of really interesting conversations with some great nuggets of information. So if you look at the titles and the descriptions, there may be pieces there that could be very supportive to you and your journey and the formula that you're using to get yourself where you want to go. So I invite you to go back and look at some episodes. I would like to highlight a couple episodes before I take you on a journey with the spine. And I'm going to talk a little bit about emotions and the spine today. But I wanted to just draw attention to Colin MacLeod. Colin is a musician that I was lucky to be introduced to just 2 short years ago. And Colin started out playing music for my Movement Made Easy classes. He started with playing traditional musical tunes, and then he started to let go of trying to control the music until he was in flow with the music. And there were several episodes that we talked about. There's one all about chakras. It's a long one, but each chakra gets balanced as you're listening, and I do movement patterns related to it. It's a really fantastic episode. If you want to check that one out and really have a healing session. Stay tuned, because Colin and I are working on more work in relation to music and movement and the ability to heal the body. And we're preparing for some upcoming conferences and developments that'll take us into retreats. So stay tuned when you see Colin's name come up. I also worked with Bradley Murphy, and Bradley and Mari Britton came on to do one of the podcasts as we were preparing for the Celtic Colors International Festival community event that we were holding. And their music is so empowering. It's so beautiful. It's steeped in tradition, the Gaelic language. Both Bradley and Mari we call them triple threats. So they can sing, dance, play instruments, but they do a lot more than that. But what happened with Bradley was he came and was a guest on my Movement Made Easy class in the spring of 2024. And he started singing it in Gaelic. He just intuitively started to do it as we were doing the exercise. And then he picked up his fiddle to give almost a droney sound in the background. It was so moving, was so amazing. And then we talked about it afterwards, and you can see the clip. It is up on my YouTube channel, and it's Movement Made Easy, but you can see the little mini clip that I did of the class. And what Bradley talked about was an elder that suggested to him there's 2 ways that you can look at music. Music can either support people or not support people. And you have to be the one who decides how your music is going to influence others. And that influence for Bradley is that he intends to heal. And when you hear him sing a song, play a song, compose, it's incredible, because he's decided already, he knows where this music's going to take him. The other thing is, we had a conversation about the order that music is played, and you can set up your playlists in a 5-element wheel. So there's our Chinese medicine again. That 5-element wheel can be a nurturing cycle, or it can be in a cycle for changing patterns and habits. So depending on the audience that Bradley is going to be entertaining for, he has a choice. Does he want to nurture his audience, or does he want to support them in making a change, have a different viewpoint? And this creates a completely different way for playlists to go together, concerts to be developed. And in our case, we've been exploring the interaction between art and music, and how art influences the way you may play a song. And different art means one particular song or tune can be played completely different because of the artwork that it's present with. So that was one of the pieces that I wanted to draw to your attention. Clancy Cox was on twice. I adore Clancy and her vocals. She was so powerful with both her message and the ability to help you move through a lot of things with her voice. And so I would recommend to you that you take a look at the 2 interviews I did with Clancy. I opened the podcast, the very first episode. I had a little tiny microphone And Mary Janet McDonald and I sat at the kitchen table with this microphone between us. It was up on a little stand, and we had our very first podcast episode. Well, I wanted to report to you, in case you have followed Mary Janet's Tunes and Wooden Spoons episodes. Maybe you did, maybe you didn't. If you didn't, on Facebook is Tunes and Wooden Spoons. And Mary Janet, during the pandemic, she wanted to be able to reach out to her family for stuff. And so she decided she would do a cooking lesson once a week, and she would pick a recipe that was out of her recipe box, and she would share it with the family. And that quickly developed into these episodes that were on Facebook Live every week. And she was bringing more than just her family in. She was bringing people from around the world who were feeling lonely and isolated. And she brought them in to be able to feel loved and connected. There's that connection piece again, that formula. And she would have special guests come on, musicians. They could talk about what they were doing. Her guests might be related to the recipe, might be related to an activity that was going on. Family member passed through, they came on, had a conversation. Now the rest of the family was up on what was happening. Just an incredible episode of activities that happened with Tunes and Wooden Spoons. So if you did not watch Mary Janet, you can go right back to season 1, episode 1, and listen to our very first podcast. And then go and check out Tunes and Wooden Spoons. Mary Janet went on to actually author 2 cookbooks as a result of that beautiful show. And she's toured all over the place because of it, and is still doing that because the cookbooks are just so sought after for the love and compassion that are in them. Now, I want to take you to a recent episode I did. This is in season 4. This is with Teresa Stone, and it was Finding Divine Guidance. I can't tell you how many people watched and listened to that episode. Teresa has these incredible new books called Conscious Insight Journals. She's taken the idea of journaling. She's taken the idea that you could automatic write, which is taking the pen into your hand and just see what comes out. But she's also advanced it to her ability to connect to people on the other side, for intuitive guidance, for astrology, for things that just happen in the universe that she can pull in. And so she's got some very specific prompts to help you pass through certain subjects. So each journal, volume 1, 2, 3, 4, each one has a very specific subject that has with it. And she has just managed to bring the teas onto it, so you can be sipping on a tea with intention that matches up with the topic of that particular journal. What does that mean? The BioEnergetic Wellness Formula is embedded within just that idea. It's so fantastic. And it means that when you're sipping on the tea, you will be moving yourself into new patterns and behaviors, resolving some of those things you might be writing about, and moving you into a future that is taking your experience of the past, but putting you in a place that you really want to be. And all that is happening with her journals. So if you didn't listen to Finding Divine Guidance, then please take some time to listen to that episode. It is just so amazing. And if you're compelled to do some writing, please order her book and whichever journal that you're drawn to, and start the journey of playing with those journals. And if you want to add a tea, that's great too. Teresa has the teas. She lives in Edmonton, Alberta, and she has the teas there that can be purchased with the book. But also you can easily order the tea from me. Tell me that you're ordering it because you're going to be working on the journals, and I will make sure that Teresa knows that. All right. I wanted to bring around a conversation with Mohammed Essa from Egypt. We did this season 3, episode 29. This was Wellness is a State of Mind, and this was really well received. And it had a lovely conversation from his viewpoint about Tai Chi and movement for wellness. And we had some lovely banter that went back and forth. For those people that have never tried Tai Chi, going onto my YouTube channel, you're going to find several playlists there. But the Tai Chi Wellness playlist is one It allows you to start really understanding your body from a seated perspective before you move into the standing version of Tai Chi. And for me, this has been a beautiful way to get to know awareness of the body, again, going back to that formula, and then how I can transfer the knowledge that I gained from that awareness into standing movements and into standing sequences. And that has really transformed my own Tai Chi, but also the way that I teach Tai Chi and what I emphasize when I have a class that I'm working on. All right, those are some of the episodes I wanted to bring to your attention, and that were very popular from those people listening to the podcast. So let's go to the spine, because this is another science piece that I wanted to bring forward that I get asked about as well. And people will say, how do you know in your unwinding trauma program that you launched in, when did we do that one? In May of 2024. Colin and I went to Tenerife, Spain to present for the Nolative conference. And we presented a full package of ways that you can move yourself out of your trauma situation through the stages of the trauma into the place where you're starting to really come up with new ideas, move forward from your experience and your knowledge. And I get asked, well, what is the science of that? And is there anybody else doing that? My answer is no, there's nobody else doing that. But the only reason I say that is because of the layers. There are people doing bits and pieces of the content, absolutely. They've been doing some of that for thousands of years, so it has a huge background. But if you go back to who's packaged it the way we packaged it, and that's with Tanya Levy's artwork, the coasters that we created between Tanya and I, and then Colin's music with the movement, that was all layers. And what happens a lot is when you break it down in science, you're trying to isolate these pieces, but we didn't do that. We actually layered what we knew worked well, layered them up together. And what happens is individual for every person, because it depends on their goal. It depends how that formula has come together for them, what they've included in it, and then their experience out of that. What is their priority that they need in order to move forward to the next place? And so that's part of my answer. But the other part is I go back to the work that I did in my dissertation. And this is the part that I think you'll find most interesting, is when you go back to looking at the spine and what is the function of the spine? There's a lot of things that it does. This is what I'm going to focus on. The spine has a way of telling us from a movement perspective how well we're functioning. So if your neck is stiff or between the shoulder blades is stiff, you have some things out of balance that aren't working well. Now, some of us will just say we're stiff. It's because I ate too much sugar, something like that. Because I lifted something too heavy the day before. I moved incorrectly, or I did a lot of movements that I haven't done in a while, so those muscles are a little bit stiff. That would be the way that we try to resolve the answer in our head. And again, from an isolated position of we're always trying to solve things by what we know, by nutrition, by structure, by mental capacity, what we've been thought of how we want things to go. And so what I'm introducing to you is the idea that that might not be true from a whole body perspective, whole movement perspective. And I did a deep dive between the master's thesis and the dissertation into understanding what's happening in the spine from a frequency perspective, through the chakras, the emotions that come from the spine, through the fascia out to the organ systems, and then the function of muscles related to those parts of the spine. That's a lot of information. And so people say, where's the science of that? Well, if we look at muscles and organ systems, that comes from the information that comes from Dr. George Goodheart, which is a precursor to the Touch for Health protocols and systems that Dr. John Thie created. And Dr. George Goodheart discovered that there are specific muscles that are linked to specific organ systems. And those organ systems are related to certain emotions. And those links are what we're able to harmonize and balance in a Touch for Health balance. In Tai Chi movements, in a Tai Chi set, we actually can harmonize and balance all of that as well. You could do it with music. You could do it with art. You could do it with color. There's a lot of ways that you can get there. And all of those can be shown by either the muscle works or it doesn't work. Okay, so that's the science piece of it. It either works or it doesn't work. But we have lots of ways of getting there. I wanted to know if the spine isn't functioning correctly, what emotions might be hampered because of that lack of mobility. And that's where I spent my time. So I did a deep dive into the frequency of each vertebra because it's a different shape. And if it's compressed, so one vertebra sits on top of the other one and is squishing on the space in between, which we have your discs in there, then you're not going to have frequency at its highest level. You're going to have a squish, okay? And what happens in Tai Chi, after we've been doing movement for a little while, the spine starts to lift, separate, open until all those vertebrae have space. And when they have space, each of those bones is going to be vibrating as it needs to in its true tone. Now the space becomes informative because you have the frequency above it and the frequency below it. And the information in that space is a harmonizing frequency. Now from the bones, you have nerve endings that go out to the organ systems and travel through the nervous system, travel through the fascia. So there's a lot going on there structurally, but also connected to that particular vertebra going out to that particular organ system, you are going to have certain muscles that link up to it. And if there is squish, frequency's not quite there, you can have those muscles turn off, not function, create a pattern of movement that isn't really helpful. And I wanted to understand a little bit of that because there's emotions linked to that. And if those muscles aren't working, the lens that you're going to be looking through, the way that you think, could actually be hindered in a certain way. And so I wanted to draw a little bit of that forward today. So I have my other deck here because I wanted to share it with you. So there's the affirmations for the body and biofield deck. Okay. And this one, if I'm going to affirmations for the spine, this was the very first deck that was created. There's 4 decks in the one deck. So this is the first of it. And this was being able to understand what are the emotions related to each of these parts of the spine. So I'm just going to randomly pull a card here. Randomly, it fell to the floor. So I'm just going to pull it up here. All right. This one is, I'm going to show the artwork. So those people listening to the podcast, this one looks like a doodle art for anybody who remembers that. It has all kinds of lines and spaces and shapes and things in different colors, making a huge mosaic. And it looks like it has wings that go out the side, looks like a column that comes up the center. There's some kind of a heart-ish kind of space in the middle. And then it has some arcing pieces that come down below. To me, you can almost see a spine. This is thoracic 12. That's what this visual represents, the artwork. And the artwork is Tanya Levy's artwork. This is photographs of nature run through filters, some layered on top of layers, to create these images. And this particular one, balance is necessary for success. Be sure to live multidimensionally with all intentions, body, mind, and spirit, equally focused on your life and your purpose. I think that's a lot about what we're talking about today, so I think it fits very well. And the note for this one is A sharp. So thoracic D, that particular bone, vibrates at the note of A sharp. Now, that also goes out to different organ systems, depending on what's attached. What I do know about thoracic 8 to 12 is 8 to 12 is where the psoas muscle inserts into the spine, and the psoas goes out towards the femur and connects the leg to the body. Very important one. The psoas muscle is responsible for how you bend forward and come back up straight, but also how you can lift your leg up and put it back down. most of our muscles don't have that multi-dimensional movement capability in there, but the psoas does. The psoas is part of the water element, and it is related to the emotions of fear and anxiety. And there are a lot of people who spend a lot of time sitting where they have everything compacted and contracted so it locks up. And then the lens can be through fear and anxiety. And it could be that somebody asks a question and the response that you give back, do you want to go out tonight? I'll meet you at 10 o'clock on the corner. And the immediate reaction is, it's too late, it's going to be dark, it won't be safe. And that's the fear and anxiety. If everything is in function, it can be, that sounds great, I will meet you there at 10, I will have, and there would be your response. Completely different response, and just based on how the body is feeling and functioning. So I wanted to bring that forward because a lot of people don't realize that the responses that they have are an indication of imbalance in the body, and it doesn't mean it has to stay there. So fear and anxiety can show up, sure. We have a lot of fear and anxiety over a lot of things. But what if it was just because you always move the same way, or you always don't move the same way, you don't move at all, and you're locking up those emotions and they become your lens, they're the way you react, and that's how you do things. And you think it's normal. It's only normal because you're not moving, and that muscle is showing its wear and tear. And what happens if you change your patterns? You start moving a little bit more, moving that particular muscle in different ways, and all of a sudden your personality changes, the way you're thinking changes, the way you respond to things changes. It's really incredible to know it could be that simple. And sometimes we're looking just for fixes that are so much more in depth. But that takes us back to our whole body movement. Okay, so I want you to think about the way in which you're engaging in things, the way that you might be responding. Always respond with a no, always respond with a yes, overwhelm yourself. That the monkey thoughts that continue to rise up and kind of hold you. How much movement have you been doing prior to those thoughts or opportunities coming your way? And is that a similar pattern that you have day after day, that it is a locked-in behavior that you could change? And if you think about your goals and intentions and setting that compass, if your intention was to release fear and anxiety from your day, then perhaps your answer, you're thinking, I need to consciously let it go and just shift it. And the body says, I want to move more. And all of a sudden you've signed up for a class down at the gym, or you went into a sport, or you signed up for a dance class. And you're like, I don't know why I did this. This is crazy. You did it because your goal and your intention at that other end is saying, I need to move more. And you responded by making a choice towards that action. The best part then is your follow through. If you made those kinds of changes, don't go back to the old patterns. It would be easy to do that. But then go, okay, I made that change. So what would happen if I continue along that trajectory and I continue with the class? I start going out with that group. I start playing more games. I start moving my body more in other activities. Now what's going to happen? Where will I be? What kinds of discoveries will I have? Okay. So as you're thinking about that, I'm just going to lock that in with my cup of tea again. Oh, lovely. Okay. So now let me bring you to a couple more episodes I wanted to draw attention to, because I really do want you to gain the value out of adding these podcasts to your day, places where you're listening or have the potential to listen. What might you be able to bring in that I've already had a conversation about, and what is coming up in the rest of the season? All right. So let's go to Opening Your Presence with Greta Mueller. Now, Greta is an author who, She had an incredible book that we talked about. And she talked about how you show up in the world and where your confidence and your intention gets you. This might be a great prelude to you want to do more goal setting and intention empowerment, but you're not quite sure how to get there, but you'd like to listen to some other things. Maybe Greta has that conversation sitting right there for you. So you've got some great insights from her on how to move forward. And I want to also bring in Illuminating Your Heart, Season 2, Episode 11 with Mylan Elka. And Mylan introduced me to Colin McLeod. So number one, the power that she had to realize the two of us needed to have a conversation together and to move both of our businesses forward and our ideas and creativity. Her episode was Illuminating the Heart. It was such a big episode, the power in it. I was moved, changed things, dropped some things, added some things after talking to her. And I had no idea any of that was going to be a result of that conversation. That's how powerful she was. So if you want to go back to her episode, please do, because it was really, really powerful. And I think you could gain a lot from it. I had The Science of Intention with Dr. Nisha Manek in Season 2. She was full of the scientific rigors, the results and the outcomes. So if you're looking for some of the backgrounds to some of the things I've talked about, she is your person. And when you know that intention has proven the change, the way that you live, why would you choose to ignore intention and maybe even not consider its significance? So I'm just going to put that to you because the science of intention is so incredibly powerful. And I know it by the way that this formula has been working for me. Okay, let's go to Season 2, Episode 5. This is Intuition and Light Love with Lori Hobbs. Now, the interesting thing about this one, this was a well viewed and listened to podcast again. The idea of light language. So if you've never heard of that term, you want to listen. Just hear, because Lori knew nothing about light language and she fell into it and discovered it for herself with no knowledge of what it was. And I find that fascinating because it wasn't like she went looking for it and then said, hey, this is how it works, I'm going to do this. She actually didn't know any of that and had to figure it out. But it was very empowering for her to know that she needed to do it. And she is a psychotherapist. She has excellent clinical practice that she has. And she's also been really active with ASAP, so the Association for Counseling and Energy Psychology. So that is a wonderful episode that you may want to listen to. Now, Season 2, Episode 2, I had a conversation with Mariah Jane Thies. She is known as the Radiant Dancer Guru, and she's changing the way people are looking at dance. That's one of the reasons I started to get into the healing work, was I knew that dance needed to be different because too many people were coming out with injuries they didn't need to have. I'm one of them. And in many ways, I have different kinds of injuries from that, and I'm dealing with the repercussions of that every day. But she has begun this incredible programming for dance educators. She's looking at studio owners, dance educators, and students so that they can be empowered. And this conversation, she talks about how Brain Gym and understanding the concepts from Brain Gym really helped her to look at dance differently and how dance training is handled. I will be adding Mariah Jane in a couple of weeks for Season 4 because she has made such incredible strides in the dance world. I want people to know about her message and the changes she's making. So stay tuned for that. But if you haven't listened to the first episode, go back and listen to it so it's kind of fresh in your mind. I want to draw attention to Season 1, Episode 8. So way back at the beginning, I asked my mentor, Greg Webb, if we could have a conversation. And Greg had such an incredible way of describing things and giving examples that brought it right down to just your like everyday, easy kitchen sink kind of thing. And it was lovely to have that conversation. We called it the Power Within the Touch for Health system. And because it's a background in all that I do, it has been, it just changed my life to learn Touch for Health. I'm so grateful that I was able to find Greg, and mentor with him, study with him as long as I could before I moved across the country, and then work as a colleague with him after that. We lost Greg in June of 2023, and we are trying to still bring forward all of the incredible knowledge that he unveiled for people, but he also inspired for people. And he really did inspire in a lot of ways from the background with us without us even knowing. And his views on Touch for Health, I think you would find very valuable if that's an area of interest for you, and understanding why this system is so valuable to me. And as we go into the new year for 2025, I am doing the full Touch for Health synthesis, teaching levels 1 to 4, but I am advancing it with the movement understanding that I have from Tai Chi and dance, and how those systems, as I just described to you, from the muscle to the organ system, from the spine, I'm going to be bringing all that knowledge in to really develop the understanding and the joy of how we can do innate healing in simple movement structures. So that might be something for you to listen to. Okay, that gets us to the end of the 99th episode. Thank you so much for listening to this point. I want to share a couple more things with you. If you are on my website, greenwellcenter.com, CENTER.com, when you come in there, up will pop my top 8 stress releasers. You can also see it right on the front page. And if you sign up to receive those top 8 stress releasers, those are the top tools I use every single day. So if you do not have that PDF, make sure you get it, because it will empower you. You can tape it to like the bathroom mirror and then just choose one tool, play with it all week long, and the next week choose another tool and play with it. Make them really reflective within your life, so that whatever situation comes up, you instantly know what tool you could use to bring life back into balance. So I invite you to really get in touch with that. And the last here is the BioEnergetic Wellness Formula. You've now heard of the background of all of that, and please invite it into your self-care plan. You have the potential every day to be your absolute best. And instead of looking for that diagnosis, the symptoms, keeping track of all the things that don't work right, shift it around. Look at all the things that are going right, and find all the ways that you can move forward, and you can move forward with joy and ease, but also with energy and vitality. And if some of what I've said today really resonates with you, It's in the Cards decks are available in my shop, as well as the Affirmations for the Body and Biofield deck and the book. And I would love for you to start playing with these tools and really seeing how these card decks, they're a lot of fun, but they're also very powerful. They're educational, and you can have good conversations with other people around a cup of tea while you explore these card decks. And I would love for you to do that. All right. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you for continuing to put this podcast on the top of your to-do list and sharing it with others. And please invite people to come to my YouTube channel at Michelle Greenwell. I would love for them to get the latest updates when I've released another video, because there's so much resource in that YouTube channel. I would love for people to be using it so much more. Have a wonderful day. Thanks for listening, and stay tuned for episode 100.